Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dawn of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 19, A Place to Lay One's Head. So, interesting chapter here. It's mainly a character kind of chapter, introducing us more to Taegum, but also his husband, Akudan, gets introduced in this chapter as well. So, anyone wanting to know if there's any sort of like LGBT representation in this, here it is. I think this is like the only one in the book. So that's what pretty much the entire chapter revolves around. It's Kavik talking to these two Water Tribe men and more or less them waiting for the signal from Yangchen. That, like, obviously we're going to eventually cut to Yangchen and her meeting with Zongdu Chasey. They're waiting to see the result of that, to see what they need to do, and that's more or less what we cover here. So, we do have to address the fact that Kavik has a broken nose after the events of the last chapter to get through the checkpoint. So, Taegum brings him back to the Water Tribe inn here, which they obviously are in charge of, together. And he just says, "I'll leave you in Akudan's care for now. I'll smooth things over back at the dock." So he leaves. So Kavik's just left there on his own, waiting for this guy to come down. And Akudan is described as being a giant. He's missing an arm, but he is huge. Like, they really do describe that he is massive. Kavik was surprised the second floor could hold him. The huge southern man roared, "Get back here." He's trying to get Taegum to come back, but no, he's gone off. It's noted that, like, Kavik saw he only had one arm, but it was bigger around than some people's legs. So Alkudan sits down and basically resets Kavik's nose using this like Water Tribe bone tool to like open the passageways and like set the bones. So pretty cool little kind of thing here. They know the medicine. Kavik goes to sleep. When he wakes back up, Taegum has returned. And from here what we get is basically him trying to engage the two of them in conversation, but them just not really wanting to talk to him because they don't really trust him, they don't really respect him too much, and they're not super into the plan that Yangchen has planned, even though they are fully loyal to her. They think it's too risky. They've lived here in Jonduri for years, so they know exactly what Zongdu Chasey is like, and that it is a risk to kind of try and do stuff behind her back. That's effectively what happens here. But there's a decent amount of detail to get through here. So he's given some traditional Water Tribe food, which is interesting. He notes, like, how do you have this here? Because they're on a fire island. So in a way, they couldn't be further from either Water Tribe in this location. And it's noted that, like, we're in a Shang city. Trade happens from all over the place, and people make sure to get their home luxuries kind of shipped in. So we see that it's not just like based on the location, that because this is the sort of fire and earth Shang city for the most part because of its location, it only has trade there. But no, it includes Water Tribe stuff as well, so that is interesting. And it is noted that the town itself is very cosmopolitan, that they're all like this, that it's kind of people from all different nations kind of here together, all different cultures represented. Like, there's a Water Tribe inn here on a fire island. There's a Water Tribe section of Bin in the Northern Earth Kingdom. This is interesting. It's like proto-Republic City style stuff. Now, it's a complicated situation in that it's this like enforced trading territories because the nations don't really have a good relationship with each other. But it seems to have led to this situation where these towns do have the people coming together, which is usually in Avatar viewed as being a good thing, and that there doesn't seem to be conflict in the Shang cities based on like national borders as such or anything like that. It seems like the main problem is just that the Shangs are not particularly strong leaders of people, and they're more businessmen and women who care about themselves being rich more than anything else. So Yangchen, in a way, is trying to do this thing where, like, if it works perfectly for Yangchen, she could turn the Shang cities into effectively early Republic cities, like 4 of them in the world. Like, this could be really, really good. We obviously seem to know that that doesn't happen, and these cities sort of in a way fall to ruin. They are not used in the same way they used to be anymore. And you wonder how that happens. Like, is it just that the Shangs fall apart? They don't, Yangchen defeats them, and it just can't continue? Or, in a way more likely, and the surprising part of this is that literally the nations, in a way, just fixing their relationships with each other and just opening up trade to the way they were before goes against the need for the Shang cities, which means like that I guess they wouldn't be as important, and so they might fall to ruin in that way as well. So it's very interesting to note just the idea that there's, like, in a way, if they just improved the way things are, it would probably lead to a better world. But if things improve from a world leader point of view, it might actually lead to a bad thing happening with the cities and the potential for what's happening. Just interesting to note. The book does not go into any level of detail like that. I just found that to be a particularly interesting, point about the Shang cities. What else do we get here? Yeah, he starts to try and talk to them. They don't really respond. This is where we get into this interesting thing about, like, he begins to speculate about what he thinks he knows about these two. And there's a lot of specific details presented here. They don't really say much about it. They do eventually say something about themselves, but it doesn't say as much as you think. So you do come out of the chapter feeling like, I probably could have learned a little bit more if you were just a bit clearer about presenting information about them. Like, okay, Alkudan is described as being a southern man, so that to me is saying he's from the Southern Water Tribe. Tayagum is, he says he's from the Orca Islands in the previous chapter. The problem is I don't think we know where the Orca Islands are. So there's a weirdness there about just simply, we don't know between the two characters where exactly they're from. Kavik notes again in the previous chapter that his style of waterbending is different from Tayagum's. And obviously Kavik is from the north, but we don't know what, like, his training or stuff like that was like. Like, that might suggest they're actually both from the south, but we'll get to it when we get to it. What Kavik says is, so are you two former Northern Guard? Thin Claws, maybe, to be so far from home? He was referring to the elite warrior retainers of Agna Kel-Ag, granted the status of brethren to the chief himself. When they weren't stationed in the poles, they served as scouts and rangers who patrolled farther away from the Water Tribe homelands. Taigum snorted. And I think Kavik interprets this as like a no. Because he's like, what? You both look like you can scrap. At least one of you has been to the continent a long time ago. His pickup man may have been justified in giving Kavik grief over security, but he'd let slip facts about himself as well. So, and Akudan's like, don't do that. Don't pry. Don't, try and investigate us and stuff like this. Then he says, for instance, unless you lost your limb in an accident, I'm thinking you might be related to royalty, an offshoot branch of the clan maybe. And then the narration just says, the northern chief's lineage had at least one notable ancestor born with one arm, a legendary whaler, in fact. And they just say, like, you're annoying, like, kind of stop talking. So, again, I'm going to be keeping an eye out, of course, as we go through the chapters to see what they do confirm or not confirm about these characters, because they don't play as big of a role in the book as you maybe think. These are more of your sort of like Wong level characters from the Kyoshi novels, where like he's probably the most underutilized flying opera company member, and these more just play support because Kavik is going to have to go on the mission on his own, get introduced to other characters. They are more support in the region rather than it's going to be Kavik and these two doing the mission. But anyway, we go on. And they talk about Yangchen for a little bit and how they believe that she is too trusting. And Kavik's like, you have met her before, haven't you? She uses spies and stuff like this. and you see this is where they're really loyal to Yangchen. They truly respect her very, very heavily. So they sort of know that she does this, but they have complete loyalty to her. But why is that the case? And we get sort of the contrast here between, like, Kavik basically says, she owes me, I'm doing a deal, I've made a deal with her, I'll do this, and she gives me this. And they're like, we're loyal to her not out of any sense of a deal, but because, like, she saved us, and so we are just loyal, we care. They say, Alkadon says, Tyagum and I were expedition quartermasters during that time, during the Platinum Affair. We were escorting the Water Tribe's payment to General Nong under diplomatic pretenses. The Earth King's forces at Lama Paka's crossing ran us down along with the Platinum we were guarding. The Water Tribe ambassadors couldn't get us released right away. We were disavowed by Oyaluk, that is the Water Tribe chief of the era. Maybe as punishment for failing to protect the money, maybe to save face, but either way, we were thrown into an Earth Kingdom prison to rot. We would still be there if the Avatar hadn't negotiated amnesty for us. No one asked her to, she took it upon herself. So that speaks very well of Yangchen once again, going the extra mile to help, prisoners of this conflict be freed. But yeah, interesting that these two were actually involved in the Platinum Affair, like, super directly. That the reason it's called the Platinum Affair is because, of course, the Earth King got away with all the platinum and plated his Badger Mole statue with it. And some of it he took directly from these two here. And it's just interesting just how close they were to it. Because, of course, Lama Paka's crossing was where the big attack happened, and the Earth King defeated General Nong. So they were right there in the middle of this major world incident that has created the situation we're in currently. So yeah, then he says, Kavik says to them, okay, so did she attend your wedding as well? Or were you already together before the Platinum Affair? And they're kind of shocked that he's sort of, I suppose, noticed this about them. So you're wearing what I assume to be betrothal armbands, Kavik said. If he was correct, they'd modified the traditional custom of giving a hand-carved necklace to your promised. The only thing I don't get is why Akudan's has so many stones on it. And this is the first thing that really gets the two of them to sort of smile and, I suppose, properly open up to him in, like, a friendly way. And Akudan says, we met before the Platinum Affair. Dum Dum here kept messing up the stone he was going to give me, but I made him fish all his failed attempts out of the rubbish. You could see a little progression of him getting better each time. Taigum leaned over and pressed his nose against his husband's cheek. The one you made looked great on the first try. So, interesting moment there. So again, this is where you might bring up a few things of like, wait, what's going on here? Betrothal armbands. Okay, that's fine. Slightly altering it because they're men. That's fine. But the only one we know for sure is a southerner, and it's not Southern Water Tribe tradition with the betrothal necklaces. That's a Northern Water Tribe thing, because they're the ones with all the traditions. The problem, I think, with all of this is that we are relatively far back in the past from when that typically is brought up in the sort of, Aang era style stuff. Now, we know there's other situations, like Karuk gave it to Umi, but again, Umi's from the Northern Water Tribe, as is Karuk, so it makes sense why they would do it, and again, that's relatively close to this era as well. But it does seem like the two tribes are somewhat together, because one of the main ambassador peoples on this expedition mission escorting the Platinum is a southerner, so if they're more interlinked, maybe the customs are more similar. Who actually knows? And again, a lot of this just comes down to the fact that it's unclear if Tyagum is Northern or Southern Water Tribe. If it's Northern, I think it makes sense that, okay, you have a Northerner in here, so you do the traditions, and that's fine. And they're both just, I suppose, aware of what they are. The other point you might bring up is wait. How does this make sense in regards to if any of them are from the North, then shouldn't that be a problem of them being officially married? Because wouldn't the North be against same-sex relationships? And when you look at the actual details presented about that in like turf wars and so on, it's never actually just flat out said that the North just has a problem or views same-sex relationships as being like illegal or something like that. No, what Kaya says in turf wars is just that the Water Tribe in general, both of them, tend to keep your private affairs to yourself. That she effectively says you won't be like disowned for being gay, but you know, don't be super open vocal about it. You know, keep it to yourself type thing. But it's fine. That's what was presented there about it. Similarly, the Eska Desna stuff from the RPG game presents the idea that okay, the tradition is it's fine, but not to talk about it that much. Don't make a big deal about it. Whereas Eska and Desna are more pushing the idea of no, be open about it. Be free with it. That's fine. And that seems to be maybe where there's pushback against the traditional thing to keep it a little bit more secret. Rather than there being like a major problem here. I think people are maybe misconstruing the idea that the Northern Tribe has these traditions and almost that like it would make sense maybe that they don't like these relationships and that would be one of their like traditions or rules, but it's never actually been said that same-sex relationships are not allowed to happen in the North. But again, I think it's fine. It just is a little bit messy with the sort of information presentation where it's like, okay, I guess he's wrong about the whole like thing about them being Northern Guard. But then what's this thing about the Northern Chief's lineage and the guy with the one arm who's a legendary whaler? I'm not sure about that. Again, just a little bit clearer. FCE at times does this a little bit where he'll just present information without like saying the significance of that information maybe. But anyway, last little bit of the chapter is just effectively, you know, the whole Zhongdu Chasey thing. They've been here for a while. They know how big of a player that she is and how dangerous it is to mess with her. Her grip on the Shangs in Jonduri is absolute. They do exactly what she says. She's the most effective leader they've had since the system began. Every errand runner in Jonduri works for her as a member of a single association. There is no class of independent agent like you who could persuade her, who could be persuaded to turn against her interests. And they just note that okay, her meeting face to face with the Zongdu should be fine, but otherwise you probably shouldn't mess with her. We think it's too risky, and we're very risk averse. So, Kavik's counter to this is like, okay, well then tell me which of you very serious professionals will break your assistant's nose tomorrow. And they're both like, I'm sorry, what? And he just points out that like, well, if you're so good at this, then shouldn't you have realized that I had to break my nose to get through the checkpoint? I was acting as your assistant. So if your assistant shows up the next day without a broken nose, there's going to be a problem. You need to break his nose to keep the act up. And they weren't thinking about that when Kavik was. So they've been thinking he's a complete amateur, but he actually thought of something they didn't. And Akudan is like, okay, I'll do it, fine. So that's where the chapter comes to an end with the idea of like, okay, they're just currently in a holding pattern until Yangchen reports back to them basically from her meeting. So yeah, interesting chapter. Like I said, the characters were the highlight here, and I definitely appreciate it. I thought it was nicely incorporated in here with these two characters. Just wish they'd just be a little bit more upfront. In general, like in the book, I do wish they'd just be like a little bit clearer about some of these things. Like when you give a place name, like use just a line of text to fully deliver home what that actually means. Like if it's a place that we don't know about, can it tell us where it is more clearly? And that just kind of is one of those things where, sure, like we'll get more chapters with these characters, and I assume there'll be more details about them. The chapters with them are definitely the ones where like I need to go back, reread them, pick out the details, and maybe we'll be able to figure out some of this stuff. But yeah, otherwise, it's solid stuff with the whole, extra platinum affair details that these two characters are involved in that, and because of the aftermath of that and Yangchen helping them, that's why they're trusted agents of Yangchen. So that's kind of good. Referencing the idea of like just before we're about to meet Zhongdu Chaisi, here's what people who have lived in her territory are saying about her just ahead of time. So some good setup work here in this chapter overall. So I do appreciate that. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on chapter 19 here and meeting these new characters here from the Water Tribe. But other than that, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.